interesting because you talk more about digital products and stuff for this.
Yeah. Um,
We can just start.
Over the years, I've dipped in and out of web programming and computer game programming and software producing, and also game writing, video game writing, as a helping students with student projects, or not student projects, but they were college students who were looking to do an MMO.
Okay.
And they needed some help, and I offered to do writing and assistant producer, and so I've moved around with a little bit of writing, a little bit of trying to learn to code, and I've been since I was a kid pretty much trying to learn to code, but I haven't put my full energy into it. And so as far as digital product in that sense is developing software, because software is a digital product. And so video games are also software, so that's also a digital product.
Yeah.
But I played around with mechatronics a little bit because I'm more mechanically minded than I am electronic minded. Like I'm not great at electronics, but I've been thinking about getting into Raspberry Pi because that doesn't have as much of the hands-on soldering and stuff that I'm not so great at.
Yeah.
But I had a go at building a robot a long time ago, and mostly I managed to get the mechanical side of it working, and I never got around to doing the electronic side of things. So design is something I'm really interested in, and I've been doing for a long time. My background obviously is in writing, game design, and filmmaking. But I do have a lot of ideas for like software.
Just like randomly, because it's quite topical. What's your sort of position on VR and AR? Have you like done anything with those?
Oh, I like AR and VR. I also like holograms though, and nobody's doing holograms. It's like the old school version of what VR and AR are doing at the moment. But I loved VR when it first came out in the 90s, and the technology wasn't there, but in the arcades occasionally you'd find a VR machine, and it was really cool. And then it died, and then I was like, oh wow, you can buy these things and hook it up to your computer and have VR at home, because all the companies went bankrupt. So the hardware was really cheap.
Yeah.
But I never did actually pick one up, buy one and pick it up and have a go with it. But I did get into the arcade and occasionally get to play with a VR game, and I love them. But I haven't had a try of VR since the new resurgence of VR and AR. I've seen a little bit of AR, but I've been wanting to get an Oculus Rift for a while. But yeah, it's kind of a luxury item.
Yeah, it's a bit pricey.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much it is in New Zealand, but yeah, I don't know anyone who's got one here.
You're looking probably nearly $1,000.
Yeah.
I think, pretty much.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about doing my own VR. I've thought about, because I'm really interested in open source hardware and open source software, and I was thinking about doing something with holograms. like it'd be really cool to recreate the chess scene from Star Wars.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I can see how that could be feasible, but it'd be it'd be either an entertaining attempt that would probably fail, or a huge project.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And the whole, yeah, would it be playable?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If you could get it to work, you could actually get interactive holograms that you move with your fingers,
Yeah.
like holographic chess pieces.
Yeah.
Getting them to be animated as well is tricky, but it's doable. It's just all the text on the subject uses this really thick scientific language. I would need an interpreter just to figure out how it actually works.
Yeah, that's the
So
thing. Like, I've read bits and I'm like, that's way too complicated. But I'm sure, yeah, that you could do it. But the actual words, I don't understand.
yeah, I literally would have to hire an interpreter
Yeah.
or someone to explain to me how this works and what I need to actually do it. But
Yeah.
it would be a really entertaining quest.
Yeah.
And I think getting that on film would be kind of cool. It would be kind of a cross, doing two things at the same time. You'd be making an interesting documentary and at the same time attempting to do something which is ridiculously like overcomplicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can do something in augmented reality a lot easier than actually getting the hologram to work. So those are the kinds of ideas that I have sometimes. I have these like crazy weird ideas that might work or might fail, but they'd be fun to try.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I turn them into stories. Sometimes I have a go at building them. Sometimes I just let them ferment for a while until I see an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of making a interactive hologram for recreating that scene from Star Wars turned into this idea of creating the ultimate man cave accessory, which would be the interactive chess set.
Yeah.
Especially if it was attached to a emulator console arcade cabinet that had a mini fridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
you that.
I'd love to give it a go, but I don't think I mean, even just as a documentary, it would I estimate it would cost about two or 3,000 to produce.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a savings thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably in a few years. But then the thing that I was thinking, because I was talking to an engineer about
Mm-hmm.
this project, but not using specifics,
Yeah.
and she said that she said something interesting, and I kind of riffed on it, and I was like, so it's like I don't have access to the kind of resources to compete directly with VR.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to be creative about my approach. And I think doing a documentary is kind of being creative about my approach. It's kind of flipping the whole risk.
Mm-hmm.
There's less risk because it's all about entertainment. It doesn't matter if I fail because it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
But the other thing I thought was, how can I do something with that, like scale, right?
Yeah.
Beyond the capabilities of VR, which would be technically my competition. And I was thinking in size, because if you do a giant hologram, you can't really do a giant VR. Like VR is, well, at the moment, it's a solo thing. I
Yeah.
think you could probably do VR online, but you can't do like an event or an outdoor with lots of people see it at the same time. I mean, they could get that to work, but at the moment, not.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, if I wanted to try to compete with VR with the project, like take the hardware and actually try to make it succeed in the industry, which isn't necessarily something I'm interested in doing, but if I did, um, I would have to think bigger. You start with the interactive chess set, and then you think, okay, we've got interactive holograms. What could we do that's bigger than that? And I haven't answered that question yet, but just asking that question was enough for me to think, oh, maybe there's more to it, you know?
Yeah. I first thought, right, that you might be building a character, which you are. Um, but then reading through your stuff about how you kind of want the art to speak for itself. And
Yeah.
you kind of don't want personality to overtake it. So maybe it's more like an absence of character.
Yeah. Like the mask allows me to be invisible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
So why is that a problem? I mean, you did tell me, but why is that a problem for an artist in this world of personality, maybe, and marketing?
Yeah, it's kind of three different things. One, I'm shy,
Yeah.
get too big, and then you get trolls, and it's can get pretty harsh. The second one was I am naturally more of a behind the scenes person,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel more comfortable creating everything in the background than having people actually look at me, because I'm not as interesting as what I can create, I don't think. Or I like to think that I can create more interesting things than the person I am. I don't know, does this sound morbid?
No, not morbid, but yeah, just well, really interesting. That I mean, it shows ambition, right? Because you're trying to make something that's bigger and better and more interesting than you could ever be, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the third thing would have to be, I do kind of get this idea that if you, the idea of the mask itself is like a liberating thing,
Mm-hmm.
not the physical mask, but the idea of a mask.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if I'm free to create anything I like, then it's like the opposite of being challenged and stimulated by restrictions.
Yeah.
It's just as powerful as restriction is the freedom from having people attach personality to what they're judging, and having the work be assessed on its own terms.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there is a lot of competition in the industry, and like I don't have the kind of, well, I don't like to compete with my personality versus the next person's personality when I don't feel personality is part of the product. Like in a way it is, but I feel like my product is the work, and kind of the purest view of the work is God. The work is like way up there. It's like it's sacred, it's important, it's significant, and it's on its own terms, and all the things you can think about. Everything serves the work, and the work is the only thing that matters in a way. I don't want to be quite so dramatic, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Elizabeth Gilbert said something like the muse, where you know, art and inspiration comes from, and like a human being is just, you know, a channel. If they catch the idea and they just channel and create it, but actually it came from a sacred, unknown, you know, godlike space.
Yeah,
But
that's
you're kind
still,
of saying, yeah, but you're kind of saying the opposite, because you create something and then that's part of things that are above, you know, the human
yeah,
world.
it makes you God.
We talked about this
Yeah.
before. Do you have a God complex?
a little bit. Well, not so much now, but when I was younger, I did very much have a bit of a God complex because of the kind of creative genius I was trying to cultivate, or attempting to be. It does make you very confident, and if you overstep that, a little bit arrogant, and then you get to God complex from there.
So not so much now. What changed then?
Oh, less. I'm less arrogant, I think, because I'm older and I'm tired.
Oh. Okay. So the only thing stopping you from being God is that you're a bit tired.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good line.
Yeah. But yeah, I just found it really interesting how you separate art from personality. I mean, you just said all that, but yeah, it's just really interesting because yeah, there are a few. I mean, I've talked to a few artists who are like, you know, I don't want to do interviews. I don't want to be in front of anything. I just want, you know, my thing to be on stage or my thing to be on screen, and I have nothing to do with it. I could give it away to the world. Yeah, especially as, you know, a writer, because sometimes a director and stuff can be more personality. It depends really. But yeah, I just found it interesting, and it's really cool that now you're creating something different than your own personality.
Yeah, that's the goal. Something that you said about directors being more of personalities.
Potentially.
That to me, that's more recent though.
Yeah,
like
probably.
in the probably early 90s, a director wasn't someone, unless you were Spielberg or James Cameron or Scorsese or Fellini or whatever. A director was not in the spotlight. So around that time, I did aspire to be that, because it was still very much behind the scenes, and it was this godlike role of, you know, creating and manipulating your puppets. And I very much liked that, and the fact that nobody knows who you are, so you can be free to not be stalked by paparazzi or have your private life all over magazines and stuff. But you can still create something amazing, and that work can find its audience, and in its own way find success, and that's enough. You know, you can change things with art, with entertainment, with products, and without anyone knowing who you are, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But that's changed quite a lot since the internet age, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was, but like it's almost like a few really good directors started showing their personality, and then now everybody wants to see directors and start talking to them, and maybe some directors are like, oh, I don't want to do interviews. And like you said, maybe some directors are a bit like writers in that very shy and very uninterested in being in the spotlight, but they want their work to succeed, of course, and find a large audience. For me, I would love my work to find the right audience and for that audience to grow steadily. That would be really cool.
So who is the right audience? What do you think at the moment? Obviously, these things can evolve.
At the moment, I'm thinking like nerds and hermits and hipsters and gothic literature graduates and film graduates and indie gamers and tabletop game designers, and there's lots of words I can throw out there about occupations or interests or whatever else factors types that you would come up with. But because there's so many of these different identifiers, that like multiplies the audience, which I think is really cool. So as some of what we talked about, like, was a way to for me to figure out who might be interested in my kind of super intellectual but also silly and fun and dark and nerdy, and definitely a bit nerdy work or potential products and services. And is there anything else? Products, services, fan, like Patreon, like stuff like that?
Yeah, like subscribers or followers or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
but then you've got the social media double-edged sword, because I get a lot of followers and suddenly people want to know who I am.
Yep. And the whole, the big thing in marketing now is, the person behind the brand, and people buy into you before they even, think, because everyone could do the same thing theoretically. Well, it depends what you make, right? And with artists, it's very different, because no one can make exactly the same, play or whatever you're creating. But I guess in general, like with marketing, it's like, okay, well, anyone could, I don't know, make a necklace. So people will buy into the person who makes it first, and then they'll then they'll buy the necklaces because they want to support that person, or they know where it came from and they like the way it was created from that person. Yeah,
that's interesting.
And it depends what. I mean, it does depend what you do, and even a necklace. No one's going to make the same necklace unless it's just in a shop. But like stuff on Etsy is going to be different anyway, right? But more like you, no one can make the things you make.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my secret plan.
It's working.
Well, it's like, did you ever see that really bad movie, the first, I think it's called The First 10 Million is the Hardest?
No, I haven't. I'll look it up though. Okay.
It was about this guy who was like an executive, and he hated it because he wanted to be a creative person. He wanted to be in actually making stuff. He was making a lot of money. This is a character, a fictional character. He was making a lot of money, but he wasn't satisfied. So he ended up going to this like Silicon Valley University, and that their project was to make a $100 computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so they made this product that was, they stripped it right back and made it, they made this really cool thing that had no user interface, no screen. It was all holographic and stuff like that. Lasers, you know, Nintendo Power Glove to control it. And then it got stolen
Yeah.
Stolen is, technically it wasn't stolen. Technically it was crookedly appropriated.
Yeah.
By this very dodgy guy. And so they had like a week to come up with something even better. And that's pretty much how it is a lot of the time. If something gets stolen, you got to just make something new. Like you can't give up, and you can't. There's not a lot you can do about it. You can sue, but
that takes time, and there'll be a deadline.
Yeah.
That's giving me flashbacks to university essays as well, right? And then you lose the whole document, and you're like, oh crap, I've got 2 days to do it, and then you just hope it's going to be better.
Yeah. I just recently.
Sometimes it feels it is better, but and the same with losing writing that I've done in work and stuff. Yeah,
and Facebook. You go on Facebook and you type in this really long message, and then you lose it.
Yep.
And then you go, oh, should I start again from nothing, or should I just leave it?
Yes.
And then for me, if I start again, I'm going to write it pretty much exactly the same as I wrote it the first time, which is weird because in my head, I've completely forgotten what I just wrote.
Yeah.
But then when I actually write it, it's like I've got a technical memory or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
It comes back slowly. Yeah.
Well, clearly, it was created from your artistic brain into consciousness, so it's all there already.
Yeah.
Maybe. But yes, I mean, short-term memory, technical memory, sometimes, you can remember the last 2 sentences you said, but you can't remember what you had for dinner.
Yeah.
You kind of list that you have a lot of descriptors for the audience you're trying to reach. I think it might be an interesting approach or question to ask. So there's 3 questions, but what don't you want? So, I mean, what kind of audience do you think wouldn't be interested in what you do?
People who are probably, for one, people who don't like to read.
Yeah.
People who don't like to read a lot. Like, people who are turned off by long letters or posts or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they'd be very interested in some of my content, at least, because I'm all about words and stories, and you get in Hollywood, supposedly, you get a lot of people whose job it is to read scripts, and they don't really do a lot of reading, and their assistant gives them the short version. And I don't think people like that would be interested in my super cerebral analytical content.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people who are really interested in 9-to-5s would be as interested in my work. I'm more of a weird rebel anarchist nerd.
Yes, you
And
are.
and
I was thinking rule breaker.
yeah, I don't think ordinary people, and I'm not saying ordinary people as in inferior beings. I'm saying ordinary people as in people who have no time for excessive leisure
Mm.
and transcendental mind exercises. People who have no time for that sort of thing would probably have no time for me and my work, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Although, even an ordinary person who works too much will want to chill out with a movie every now and then. And and why not a great movie that's really cerebral, really violent, and really unique, and is a total mind trip. That's important too. Like, it totally like messes with your head. Because Cronenberg does that, and Lynch does that, and Genet does that, and Carruth. Oh my God! Did you see Upstream Color?
No.
Oh, it is the weirdest movie I've seen in a long time.
Upstream what?
Color, is
Okay.
in like blue or purple
Oh, okay.
colors,
Okay. I will
but
check
it's
it out.
spelled the American way with no U, so
All
it's
right.
Color.
Yep. Okay.
He's being hailed as like the next. Well, somebody called him the illegitimate child of James Cameron and David Lynch, but
Wow.
I think he's like the next Cronenberg.
Wow.
He's really amazing. He made a science fiction film prior to Upstream Color called Primer.
Mm-hmm.
It did really well in the indie scene because it was really low budget, but also really intellectual, and it was very simple. And there's a lot of things about his approach that I felt familiar with. So yeah, I really like that kind of stuff, and I like discovering new people to follow,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
like filmmakers or authors or game designers. And I'm obsessed with lists, so I write all these lists of people to follow, and I'm just like, yep.
Well, yeah.
I
You
like
have the top 30. Is it artists or
creative
filmmakers?
influences.
Yeah. 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 On your
Creative
website.
influences. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they
That
seem
was
to
hard.
change.
They do sometimes, yes. But it's hard for me to keep it to 30.
Yeah. Yeah. You so, yeah, go on.
Well, I've got multiple fields of interest creatively.
Mm-hmm.
In each field, I must follow like 5 to 10 different artists, other creatives, who I aspire to at least reach that level of success, if not, be as good as. And then you times the fields, say there's 5 with 10, that's 50. So that's already too many.
Yeah, I guess. Well, too many for who? You don't have rules.
Yeah. If my website is all lists, though, that's even worse than it being really wordy for most people.
Yeah, yeah. People won't read, a list of 100 people, or at least, you have to explain why that matters to you. So yeah, the question could be, well, my question, well, what do they all have in common? All your influences.
I guess what I was saying about Shane Carruth, and about messing with your head.
Yeah.
Like, I love artists who really mess with your head. Like Lynch, he messes with your head, but Cronenberg does it in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Lynch does it in a kind of voyeur crazy guy, and then Cronenberg does it in like a grotesque, over the top, clinical torturer.
Yeah.
So he's like clinically torturing you, but in a good way.
Yeah.
So I like that. And I like Lars von Trier, who's a minimalist.
Yeah.
I like minimalism because it's an interesting idea. It's messing with the norm.
Yeah.
He's a rebel and an anarchist, and that's cool. So maybe you could simplify it down to I like messing with people.
Yeah. Well, like you said before, manipulating puppets, but then it's more like the mental puppets, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me. Actually, there's the I don't know if it's Disney, but have you seen the film Inside Out?
Oh God.
I need to watch it, so you know, I kind of know about it.
Some people like it. Some
Yeah,
people have said I don't like it. No, I don't like it.
Oh, why not?
There wasn't a hell of a lot of original writing in there. Like the
Well, no. If you're comparing it to your own, you know,
concept.
influences, then no, it's a Disney movie.
Yeah, but Wall-E was great.
That's true.
But it's been a while since Wall-E.
Yep. Yep. Is that your favorite?
I mean,
is that your favorite kids movie?
I love. My favorite kids movie would probably have to be Labyrinth.
Is that a
But
kids
it's not
movie?
animated.
Is that a
It
kids
is a kids movie, yeah.
Scary.
Yeah, well, you know, they made them tough back then. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean,
Never-ending story. Never-ending story is a kids movie as well, but oh my God, Artax, that's traumatic. Have you seen Never-ending Story?
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't traumatize kids these days.
That's true. I mean, even when you think of The Lion King, which is probably my all-time favorite kids movie from when I was little.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's pretty traumatic. Like, that was the first time there was a real scary, like a real scene like that in a Disney movie. That was the first time. Yeah. And you know, a core loved character to you know, die halfway through the movie. That was like the first time that happened.
Yeah.
So I'm traumatized, clearly, still. But I watched The Lion King last year. So yeah, that was have you seen the real life one? It's really good.
Oh, I just don't like what they did there.
What? No, I thought it was clever. I mean, yeah, there was you know, it could have been better, but I quite liked the backstory around things, and yeah.
I haven't actually seen the whole thing. I'm just referring to the super realistic CGI. It's like, it's kind of a gimmick.
Yeah.
Well, it's very much a gimmick, but it's also like really gross looking.
Yeah. Well, sort of.
But
you like that.
But it's also a spectacle as well. So it's kind of good and bad. And for me, it's like, why don't they do something that's really messing with people, right?
Yeah.
Like that, and write an original story for it.
Well, yeah. I think, you know, that was probably because they wanted to do that for the first time so that they knew how it all worked, maybe.
Yeah, except that they remake everything now.
Yeah.
And they reboot everything and they do sequels and three-picture deal.
Yeah.
It's like...
But the Lion King's different because that was all, you know, CGI. It was all very realistic CGI. Whereas something like Beauty and the Beast, that was part of that, but actually there's, you know, human actors and it's, you know, making it into actual real life. But The Lion King was different because it was all one thing.
So you liked the fact that they were remaking your favorite animated film?
Well, probably, yeah. But there was
See,
a lot
I
of
would.
first things that they made, 'cause they made a whole film out of CGI, which was a first, right? So it was interesting.
Okay. See,
No?
I would be the opposite. I would be like, if they remade Labyrinth, I would find out where they lived and cut their toes off.
Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but no,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
but I enjoyed it when I watched it, right? And now I like it. But when I was going to it, I was like, oh, I'm prepared to be disappointed because how can you top the original, right? So yeah, there is that. But they made quite a different movie. So for me, I feel that's okay. They didn't just.
Okay.
They added.
Well, that's how I felt about the Karate Kid. I loved Karate Kid Part 1 and 2, right? And then they did a Jackie Chan Karate Kid, and I was like, well, it's Jackie Chan. It's not, the same thing at all.
yeah.
It wasn't great, but I wasn't offended by the remake.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, I'm very offended by Hollywood remakes because I'm just like, why would you do that?
Yeah. I that was my first reaction when I heard they were doing that for The Lion King and for all the other ones. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of worked out most of them.